thank you for joining us on this next of the series of Aging with Attitude. For those that are just joining in or maybe want to catch up, Aging with Attitude is about the demographic 45 to 64 as they prepare for life's second half. And this particular episode is very little different in that we're looking at the generational win-wins. So with us today, we have Scott McWalter and Tiana Rossi. So just a few questions to get us started. Now, when I say aging with attitude, and I'm going to leave this open for either or to join in, when I say aging with attitude and intergenerational win-wins, what comes to mind?
I would say a lot of the win-wins just have to do with being able to take advantage of mentorship. And by being able to leverage mentorship, it actually helps with your next steps. And your next steps in life are always going to be inevitable, and it's important to make them count. And to help make them count, you can definitely achieve your goals in the future by having that advice, that mentorship, that guidance for people who have been there in the past and can offer you that advice so that you're more proactive instead of reactive in the choices and the decisions and the accomplishments that you render.
Mm-hmm. And Tiana, what are your thoughts on just that intergenerational win-win and any past experience that you might have had?
Definitely. So I think the main word that comes to mind for me is knowledge and knowledge sharing, because we all just have so much to offer one another in terms of experience, what we've been through, and maybe some different ways of going about processes, whether it's work or life. I think it's always important to see things from both sides of maybe what's worked in the past, what hasn't, what we can do in the future. And I think intergenerations can work together really well that way to share either a new process that someone might not think of, or maybe saying, oh, we've done that in the past and this is how it turned out. So
yeah, that's really cool. So I just want to touch a little bit on why each of you are here, why I sort of thought you'd be excellent spokespersons. And Scott, you actually work for a group in town, and your boss is, I kind of think of him as the Jimmy Pattison of Prince George, and that is John Brink. So you work with the Brink group, right? So did you want to just talk a little bit, expand a little bit on what it's like working with John? And John, apparently he's getting close to 80, is that right?
Yes, that's correct, Rita. So John is actually celebrating his 79th birthday this November 1st of 2019. And it's at the age of 78 right now where he's being recognized with some of his life's work and some of his accomplishments over the past 55 years of living in Prince George in northern British Columbia. And he's the personification of resiliency in terms of proven that it's never too late in life to accomplish anything you want, and that age will always just be a number, right? Mm-hmm. Age is nothing compared to mindset. You should always be as old as you feel, and it's never too late to actually go out and get what you'd like to achieve in life.
Perfect. And Tiana, you're involved in the HR industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do you see in younger and older generations working together?
Well, I think this is a really cool topic for people in the HR industry because, one of our main goals all the time is growing our employees and working with one another to find strengths. So working with younger generation, what are your strengths coming in? What can you offer to help the older generation? The older generation, what wisdom and maybe knowledge you can share with younger generations. So it's something really cool that I think is a big topic in HR right now as well. So I work with it every day and finding maybe the strengths. If someone comes to me with a problem, maybe go talk to this person in the office because they've been here a long time and they know our history. Or maybe, hey, we have a new person that's come in who is really passionate about social media, so they could help get the ground running on someone else's process. So that's really important.
And that is really perfect. And, even how this particular intergenerational aspect was inspired. It was a young friend who wanted some, just contacts in the community, and I was in a position to do that. But I had just bought a new vehicle, didn't have a CD player in it, and he kindly uploaded all my motivational speakers onto a stick. So now I can actually play that in my new vehicle. So there's all types of intergenerational win-wins that we can do. Some of them social media, some of them in contact, some of them are just business savvy. Any of those ideas that I just passed forth resonate with any of you, either of you, that you'd maybe like to comment on?
I'd actually love to comment on what Tiana just said, and that's knowledge, right? Where, like, going back to when I first joined the Brink Group of Companies over 3 years ago, I look at it as my second MBA, where in life you should never stop learning. And whether that's through a vocation or whether that's through a post-secondary education or just reading books or audio tapes or podcasts, you name it. But working at the Brink Group of Companies, there has been that element of mentorship in the career, and you get to see firsthand of different skill sets such as negotiations and decision making, and not getting too low when industries in turmoil, or not getting too high when markets are good and profits are high, right? So I think just being able to have that mentality of life is about never stopping to learn, never stop learning, and always be looking to expand your knowledge networks.
Perfect. So Tiana, you being an HR person, what are your thoughts on what Scott just said? And as an HR person, what would you do to actually help facilitate that?
Definitely. So, like you mentioned, knowledge and always learning is so important for anybody of any age, any industry. And we have a really awesome program at CBIG to continue our learning and getting people into different programs and continuing to go to conferences, and always connecting with people in the community, I think, is a big one as well. So working with one another to connect, like you said, you've connected people with one another, and it's been beneficial for everybody on both sides. So that connecting and knowledge sharing, and like you said, always learning is huge.
Okay. And another thought that just came to mind, there are different generations out there. Some of them are called boomers, some of them are called seniors, some of them are called millennials, some of them are called XYZs or whatever they are. What are your thoughts on stereotyping and labeling each other in that way?
Well, for me, I think that's a hard one. I think it's great that we're starting this kind of conversation, because I've been told on countless times actually that once I work with somebody that I don't work like a millennial, or oh, I thought you were going to be a bit lazy because you're a millennial, or this and that, and I've heard negative connotations towards people who are baby boomers as well. And so I think it's a really important conversation to start having, to maybe look away from those kind of stereotypes, or look for people as their strengths and what they can offer, not their age or what box we put them in, because I don't think work ethic or value is generally fit into one group. I think we all offer something a little bit different, and we all have positive and negatives for sure, but going away from those kind of stereotypes and negative connotations, I think, is important.
Great insight. Scott, can you comment on that?
I couldn't agree more with Tiana there, where you always hear connotations associated with certain generations, saying like millennials are lazy or what have you, and I couldn't disagree more, because there's going to be hard workers in every generation category. There's going to be high performers. There's going to be people that might be attributed to laziness. It doesn't matter to me what generation they're part of. You're always going to have a mix, right? So I think that instead of focusing on like what characteristic is supposedly attributed to what generation, I think you just have to know that there's going to be a mix in each generation. But the knowledge that can actually be shared between the generations, I feel like that's what really needs to be taken advantage of, because there's a lot of hidden gems out there, a lot of older people that would love to share their knowledge, but they might not know how. They might not have any networks or be able to get into different circles of influence where they can actually disseminate all the information, the wealth of knowledge that they've gathered through the past 3, 4, 5 decades.
Mm-hmm. And as I often ask the question to somebody that is maybe of an older demographic, I ask, well, what advice would you have for your 45-year-old for your 45-year-old self? And either one of you can answer if you want, but what sustainable would either of you be doing to prepare for your 45 or 50-year-old life? Is there anything that you think that, younger people should be doing in order to prepare for that next phase of life, that as you go into life's second half? Would either of you like to go first?
Sure, yeah. I think healthy habits is always super important. I mean, like you mentioned, I'm sure advice for yourself as a younger person would be a lot different, and maybe you would go different routes. But even looking at myself and the path that I've taken in life, looking back, I'm like, oh, I wish I knew this when I was, 18, 19, 20. So I think healthy habits is very important. Even just simple things like creating a schedule, creating a routine to make sure you're taking care of yourself, your physical, mental, spiritual well-being, super important. And it's a huge topic right now, which is great as well. Everyone's mental health is coming out into light, and it's a bit more of something you can talk about. So healthy habits, meal prepping, having a schedule so you can get out into nature, go to the gym at set times is really important to me, I think.
Perfect. So we're about to go into a break pretty quick. So we've got about a minute left. Scott, would you like to expand on that?
Of course, and that to me personally comes down to goal setting. And goal setting, thinking on paper, is something that personally has changed my life for the better tenfold. And I can't emphasize enough how much improved my life became after I started setting goals. And that's not just short-term goals, it's long-term as well. So daily, weekly, monthly, 1, 5, 10-year goal plans, and knowing that they're going to be fluid, that a lot of your long-term plans, there's going to be shifts and it's not going to be a strict schedule, is important. And I feel like just the simple act of goal setting, when I tell people set goals, what are you going to be doing 10 years from now? They have absolutely no idea. They're not making plans for 10 years ago because it seems too far in the future. But think about 10 years ago today, what you might have been doing. Think about the year 2009, some memories. Does it really seem that long ago? Absolutely not. So start thinking big, start thinking long term, start making some goals 5, 10 years into the future, and you'll be amazed about the positive things that start happening in your life.
Great wisdom. So Scott, Tiana, I want to thank you for joining us here and helping to start this conversation. And we'll be right back on this second half. I'd like to introduce Judy Mason. Now, Judy was backstage. She was sort of overhearing the first part of the conversation. So with that, Judy, you heard several minutes of conversation between our earlier guests. What were your thoughts in general?
Well, first, I just want to say how poised they were and how knowledgeable they were. They spoke of knowledge. I think knowledge is really important. And in my life, I found mentorship as well, and I found I've kind of fallen into informal mentorship of many young people. But along with that, I really believe that lifelong learning is very, very important. And all of these young people are getting engaged in their community, and through that, they're doing lifelong learning, and particularly the area of leadership, and that's something that maybe we can speak about in a little while.
Mm-hmm. And so why don't we take that leadership and talk about it right now? Now, I understand that you are an HR type person and very involved in the HR community. Can you talk a little bit about that and leadership?
I'd be delighted. HR is a passion of mine. I kind of fell into it organically when we had our own office. We had an accounting practice, Dean Mason Company, for 25 years. We had wonderful successors come on, and they now own the company. It's DMC. I think the other thing with leadership is I lead many organizations now. I've found that I've fallen into chair roles, and one of them is the CPHR Northern Advisory Council, and Tiana sits on that with me. And she's become an emerging leader in that organization. I think leadership it shows itself and presents itself in many ways. But one of the things that I really recognize in either entry-level, mid-level, or senior-level leaders is their capacity for emotional intelligence. And that simply means that they can think very practically. They have a sense, a natural practical approach to life, and they don't get overly emotionally involved or emotionally involved in the situation. They just act at a very fundamentally smooth, intelligent method. And I think that Tiana talked about, and so did Scott, about technologies of today. And I think that they bring leadership in that area where someone my age, more senior, probably brings sort of that practical experience to life. And I find more and more I'm just asking questions and making them think about their next opportunity.
We've been hearing a lot about emotional intelligence these days. So, I'm glad that you touched on that. And, it can be found in whether people are young or old. Is there a technique out there of merging the younger, the older? And what is your thoughts on interrelational experience, sitting face to face, talking, and that sort of thing? Do you think it's important, or is the internet fine? Or
Well, because I'm of a more senior generation, I love that communication, that face-to-face communication. But I see the value and importance of using other methods, social media, whether it be LinkedIn or Facebook or any of those sorts of platforms are so important because it's just in time communication. But I think that all generations thrive for that human touch, that emotional connection, and I think that you really can only get that through this face-to-face, as we are doing right now. I can see your eyes, I can see your smile, I can see your body language, and I think that that is so important. And I find that when I meet with my little proteges or my more senior or mid-level proteges, we gain so much from each other, and they want to meet. They don't want to do it always in some other social media or phone kind of communication method. They want to meet, have a cup of coffee, get to know each other.
So, just with these thoughts of talking together, starting the conversation, and that sort of thing, if you were to give advice to your 45-year-old self, and in essence, those that are in that sort of about to enter into life's second half, what kind of advice would you give?
Leap in, be passionate, don't hold back. If I look back through my life, I did an MBA program when I was 55, and it has been so beneficial. Could I have used it in my profession if I'd done it earlier? Probably to a greater degree. But what it really gave me was the confidence to go back and reinvent things that I had invented. It gave me the opportunities to do things like sit on the Board of Governors for the University of Northern British Columbia. I now teach at the university as a sessional instructor in the School of Business. Those opportunities opened the door to me. Even the fact that I chair the CPHR Northern Advisory Council, that came as a result of an opportunity after I did that education. But I think it just expanded my thinking. It made me more global. It made me more present. It made me more aware of communicating with younger generations and finding out what it is that we can do together to collectively create a better world, a better society for all of us, and better work environments for all as well.
Do you know if there's any other resources out there that we can sit face to face and start this kind of a conversation?
I think they're all over the place. I think you could start it in the post-secondary world. You certainly can start it in the HR community. I think that any sports organization would be another good place. Not-for-profits, places like Rotary. Rotary is intergenerational in itself, and right now we're going through a whole exercise of opening up the conversation about what Rotary should look like in the future. How different intergenerational groups can participate and change Rotary for the better. Because if organizations always do what they've always done, then they will die. They will never move on forward. They won't exist in the future. They won't be sustainable. And so we have to look to the future. We have to look at what we can do different. And we only can do that by sharing experiences with each other across generations.
Great advice, Judy.
Yeah.
So we've talked about a number of different things, and earlier in our program we talked about stereotypic labels. What are your thoughts around that?
I have to say that I could be accused of using those stereotypical labels in the past. In fact, the project that I did in my MBA program was on Generation X and Y in the public accounting sector. But as time has gone on and those 10 years have passed, I see the importance of maybe talking about emerging people in the workplace or leaders, the mid-level and the senior level. And maybe the conversation could be more versed and scaled around that conversation rather than putting the typical titles and stereotypes on those generations. But you know, I really don't think it's so much about the traits of the generational cohorts, because that's how I look at it. I think it's more about those things that molded them as individuals, those things that they experienced in life. So in my life, John F. Kennedy died. That was a huge thing. In my parents' generation, it was World War II. You know, then other generations experienced different things. So, you know, the current generation, you know, experiences so much about terrorism and, you know, the connectivity of social media and maybe lack of privacy in some ways. And so that probably will mold them. It's more about those experiences that mold us than it is about the traits. Because if you're going to start talking about traits, you have to start thinking about psychometrics and how we're all molded and our learning styles and all of those sorts of things that also have an impact on who we are as people.
Mm-hmm. So you're one of those persons that seems very fit and very engaged. What are some of the things that you started doing at a young age to get here? I mean, it didn't just all happen overnight.
I love to run. I've had a passion for running, so running was my venting, my way I received energy. I'm a social person, so engaging with people also really gave me energy. And so I found the combination of fitness. You know, I taught aerobics when I was younger, probably about 10 sessions a week. So I've stayed connected and I've influenced my family. My son is now running marathons. He just completed the Boston Marathon. He's hoping to do Berlin in the future. So, you know, you pass those experiences. And I think that, you know, oxygen gets going through your system. Endorphins get floating through them as well. And it gives you a clearer mindset and more positivity in your life rather than looking at the world from the cup half empty. You look at it from the cup half full. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So how long ago would you say you started that kind of thinking? And what about nutrition?
Oh, definitely nutrition as well. I probably started running when I was about 18, 19. I was in nursing at the time. And I ran my first marathon when I was 40. My goal is to run a half soon, before I turn 70. In regards to nutrition, I think it's all about balance. You know, I don't go into fats. It's lots of fruits and vegetables, proteins. I do eat some carbs and I do like dessert, but I think it's everything in moderation. One of the things I have noted recently, though, is that there are things like magnesium out there that help you with, you know, different things. And so I think sometimes taking supplements that will, you know, embellish your diet, help, you know, help enable things to work better is maybe not such a bad thing.
Well, Judy, it sounds like you've got some of the pieces put together there and I thank you for sharing with us and the wisdom that you've acquired over the years and just the enveloping of the younger generation. I think you're a real gift to Prince George. And Judy, thank you for joining us. So I'd like to, you know, just invite you to come back for our next of our series. And I'm Rita Weeb. Till next time.